As an editor, I often get asked by writers, especially new writers, why they should use standard manuscript format. Because writers created their story in a certain format with a certain font and style, they've become attached to the way their story looks on the page and think that that is a part of the story itself, and this just isn't true. It's okay to change it when you're submitting to agents, publishers, and editors, and in fact, it's needed. I'm Caitlin Burvey, freelance editor and writer, and this is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers. And writing that lingers gets remembered, reread, and recommended. So before we go into the 3 reasons why writers should use standard manuscript format, I think it's important that we cover what standard manuscript format is. So on your chart, you can see the basics. And this comes directly from William Shun's website. He has been the go-to person for standard manuscript format for years, and I've linked to him in the show notes. So what you need is a typed page. It should be the standard page size, which is 8.5 by 11 inches, black ink, white paper, don't get fancy there. It should also be left aligned, not justified. Justified looks like a mistake when you have that huge space between words because some lines are shorter than others, so don't use justified. It should be double spaced and have 1-inch margins, half-inch paragraph indentations. The font should be size 12, and it should be a monospaced serif font. This is something like Times New Roman, Courier, Courier New, Arial. These are the easiest to read fonts. And the final thing that it should have is a header, and in the header will be your last name, the title of the piece, and the page number. Now there is a slight difference between standard manuscript format for longer works like novels and short stories. And basically that is, novels have title pages, short stories don't. This is an example of the title page and first page of a novel submission. In the title page, the left corner is your contact information. It should have your legal name, your address, your phone number, and your email address. The reason you need your legal name is hopefully you're getting paid for your story. So you want to put the name that they can make the check out to. That's also why you want to include your address, is so they have somewhere to mail that check. The phone number and the email are for them to contact you, and most people will start with the email, then they'll try the phone number, so don't be afraid of getting a bunch of phone calls. In the center of the page, you're going to have the title in all caps, followed by the name you want your story published under. This is where you're going to put your pen name. It could also be your legal name or some variation thereof, but this is the name that your story will be published under. At the bottom of the page, you're going to put the approximate word count, and this should be to the closest 1,000 words. You don't need to put the exact word count or anything like that. You could say about 89,000, about 106,000. That's good enough. So on the first page of the story, you're going to have the header start. And remember, that's your last name, title of the story, and your page number. And then you're going to start your story, whether it's the first chapter, the prologue, or the first section, however you're breaking it down, about halfway to 2/3 of the way down the page. That's the way that you want to start each new chapter and each new section in your story. And this creates white space, which gives the reader a break, and it also signals that there's a change happening. So what's different about short stories? You still have all of the same information, it's just in slightly different places because it's all on one page. So in the short story, you still have the upper left-hand corner, your legal name, your address, your phone number, and your email address. Across from that, in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to put the approximate word count. Now for a short story, I recommend doing the closest 100 words instead of the closest 1,000. For flash fiction, closest 10 would probably be best because they have very strict word counts. Now you have to put that in the upper right-hand corner because your story is going to start halfway to 2/3 of the way down the page, and you can't put it at the bottom. So before you start your story, you still want to put the title and the name that you want it published under. Again, this is where your pen name would go. And then you're just going to go right ahead and do a little space and start your story. So that's what standard manuscript format looks like for both a short story and for a novel. And there are 3 main reasons why writers should use standard manuscript format. The first is it's just professional. If you use standard manuscript format, You're going to your corporate interview in your nice pants, your nice blouse or button-up shirt. You've ironed them. You're wearing your good shoes. You've done your hair. You're showing up and you're saying, I really want this and I respect you enough to dress up for this interview. If you don't use standard manuscript format, you're showing up to that same corporate job interview in flip-flops and ripped jeans after you spent the night at a bonfire with your friends on the beach. Basically, you're saying, I don't really care about this. I don't want to dress up for you. I don't respect you. So why should the agent, publisher, or editor respect your piece and take it seriously if you're not taking them seriously? You want to show that you're a professional in this industry and that you know what the standards are. And standard manuscript format is the first way you're going to show them that. The second reason you want to use standard manuscript format is for readability. Standard manuscript format uses 12-point monospaced serif fonts because they're the easiest to read. When I worked in medicine, I learned that when doctors and therapists are working with stroke victims or people who have other brain injuries that make it so they have to relearn how to read, they use Courier New. And that's because Courier New has the easiest to read spacing and letter shapes out of all of the fonts that we have right now. So you don't want to make your readers work any harder than they have to read your piece. So choose a font that's easy to read. The next aspect of readability that standard manuscript format brings to a document is white space. And to me, this is the most important aspect of standard manuscript format. I was a biochemistry major in college, which meant I got to read a lot of science textbooks that had tiny little font squeezed all the way to the edges of the page and very little pictures, and it was exhausting to read those. I didn't like doing it. I would read a couple pages and get up and pace around my room and then go back and read a couple more because it was really too much information in one space. Readers would rather look at 20 double-spaced pages than 10 single-spaced pages because they feel like they're getting through your story faster, and it actually creates the illusion of faster pacing. So double spacing your document is really important for readability. This is also what your 1-inch margins are doing, and your size of your font and your paragraph indentations. A lot of standard manuscript format goes into creating white space to make your story as easy to read as possible. And that way your story itself shines instead of the formatting. The third reason standard manuscript format is used is for organization of information. So when I was telling you where to put your contact information and where to put your pen name and where to put how many words are in your document, all of that are things that agents, editors, and publishers need to know and need to be able to find easily. So if you put it in the place they're used to looking for that information, they can find it in a snap and be ready to accept your piece. You want to make it as easy as possible for publishers to say yes to your story. And one way of doing that is putting all of your information in the place they're expecting to find it. If you don't put your information where they expect to find it or hide it in some weird place, they might just move on to the next story. Right now, the publishing industry has a lot of authors to choose from, and they're not going to spend a lot of time on a new person who doesn't even know the format. So I would also like to mention why developmental and copy editors like me also prefer standard manuscript format. It's the same reason you should use standard manuscript format in critique groups and when giving your document to friends or workshop partners to edit. And this is, we need space to write our comments. Even if we're using Microsoft Word track changes and it has the little red line that connects your bubble to the place in the text that we're commenting on, it's still so much easier to read if it's double spaced. And if someone's handwriting their comments, you want to give them the space to actually write on your paper so you can see exactly where they're talking about. The other thing that this does is by giving them all of this space, you're inspiring more in-depth feedback. So they're going to go more into why they think this, or why they were confused, or why they really like this section if you give them the space to do that. So give them that space. There are a couple things that I would like to say about standard manuscript format before ending this video. The first is, if you're a poet or a hybrid writer, standard manuscript format might look a little bit different for you. If the way the words look on the page is really important to what you're trying to get across, try and get it as close to standard manuscript format as you can. So this means put your contact information where I told you to, put the approximate word count where I told you to, and maybe the double spacing is not exactly going to work for you. That's okay. The standard manuscript format that was developed by William Shunn is for prose. So poetry and hybrid pieces are going to be a little bit different. Don't be discouraged by that. Look it up for your individual publication to see what they prefer. The last thing I want to say to all of you writers is standard manuscript format is not how your piece will be published. It will be put in a whole different format for that. This is just how you're sending it to the people who are deciding whether or not they want to publish it. So it's not permanent. You do get more of a say in how it looks on the printed page. Also, be sure and look at the guidelines for each publication or agent or editor that you're submitting to. Especially if you're submitting shorter pieces, sometimes they don't want your contact information on the document itself, and they've provided a separate subscription form for you to put that information. That's often because they know a lot of the writers who are submitting to their magazine and they don't want to be biased. So be sure and leave off any identifying information when you are submitting to those places. And be sure and read everybody's guidelines that you're submitting to carefully, because everybody has quirks and little things that they like different. So, to recap, why should you use standard manuscript format? Because it makes you look professional. It shows that you know your industry. It is more readable. It creates white space and has the easiest to read setup. And it organizes all of your contact information and information about your piece in an easy to find place so that editors, agents, and publishers don't have to go looking for it. If you enjoyed this video, please like below and let me know what you think of standard manuscript format in the comments. I will try and respond to as many questions as I can. For more videos like this, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing. I'm Caitlin Burby. To find out more about me, please check out my website, www.ignitedinkwriting.com. Good luck igniting your ink and submitting.